the most recent time Tom nailed it was when he said the S&P would reach 5,500 by the end of June. It did. It hasn't closed above there, I don't think yet, Tom. But joining us now is Tom Lee, Fundstrat Global Advisors, managing partner and a CNBC contributor. But close enough for government work. You're right again. And once again, your rationale was borne out. It was that inflation would continue to cool. It's July 1st. You have a new target for the end of the year, or I've already sort of foreshadowed some of the things you were talking about. The S&P earnings might even be above what you thought.
Yes, I think that now that we're at the mid-year, 2025 earnings look a lot stronger than we thought at the start of the year. We thought maybe 260. It's probably closer to 275, maybe 280, even 285. And I think the multiple we thought originally could be 20 times that number for next year, but given the Fed has more reasons to be dovish, and I think maybe the employment picture is softening, PE multiples actually could be higher next year. So I'd say between now and year end, stocks should be higher. I mean, we've had a strong first half already, and second half won't be as strong as the first half, but we should build upon those gains. So yeah, it looks pretty good.
You have numbers. I mean, so if the S&P is 285, you possibly, that's earnings,
correct,
285, up from 270. Because the economy doesn't cool, multiples don't expand. In fact, they might contract from 21 to 20. So if you multiply 20 times 285, you get to 5,800.
Yeah, so that sounds like it'd be within reasonable, as a reasonable base case, that stocks don't have to have a prodigious second half. They just have to follow what typically happens in the second half, especially in an election year.
So 5,800 for the year, what would that be the total return? If it's 15 now, so
yeah, so that's, it's a little bit more than 20%.
Which would be after last year's
24.
That's a couple of years no one really expected, I don't think.
That's right. I mean, that's painful for people who've been sitting in cash for 2 years, earning 5% because they missed out on a 50% gain, and that's 10 years worth of sitting on cash. So I think the end of this year is a little bit of a day of reckoning for those who said, oh, I'm happy with my $6 trillion in cash earning 5%, when in reality, unless the economy is rolling into recession, the expansion continue for some time.
Is the $6 trillion, and that's what's fueling this, the additional liquidity, people aren't fully invested, was that gotten through organic positive means, or was it gotten through stimulus that shouldn't have been probably legislated and shouldn't have been printed? Is it good money, or is it money that comes home to roost because it's too much?
I haven't deconstructed that, but it's a valid point because we are running a pretty big fiscal deficit at a time when it's not necessary. There is a lot of earned income on people's assets. I think that accounted for a lot of this increase in cash, and historically that would have been reinvested in the economy or into equities, but it's been instead earning cash.
You know that my insecurity about crypto manifested itself again in my feet of clay, because I said, Tom Lee's going to be absolutely right about the 5,500. Why is he still saying 150 for Bitcoin? Why do that? Why not just focus on stock? Don't stick your neck out, because it was falling below 60,000. Now it's back to almost 63,000. So that $6 trillion we just talked about, that sort of plays into your Bitcoin thesis.
That's right. Bitcoin's probably suffering from the Mt. Gox, starting distributions in July. That was a huge overhang for many years. But if I was invested in crypto knowing that one of the biggest overhangs is going to disappear in July, I think it's a reason to actually expect a pretty sharp rebound in the second half. So I think 150 is still within.
It's already July 1st, so that's so you're not taking that off the table. That's still a possibility.
That's right. And one thing to keep in mind, Bitcoin makes most of its gains with 10 days every year. If you take out the 10 best days in a single year, Bitcoin actually has negative returns.
Hey Tom, when you say there's a reckoning for people who have been hanging around in cash, that means that they're going to have to say, oh my gosh, what am I doing, and get into the market, or that they've missed it all and they've missed potentially years of advances?
Well, it's probably a little bit of both. I think that has been valid reasons for people to be concerned because inflation isn't fully defeated yet, and there's people who think we could roll into a recession. So I think those are valid, but if we don't have those, then the stock market shouldn't peak next year. We're mid-cycle. We have a $100 trillion generational asset transfer going from boomers to Gen Z and millennials. They're going to have a higher risk tolerance. So I think stocks have a pretty long runway ahead. That's why I think 2 years is a day of reckoning.
Related back to Bitcoin, I don't know if you saw the interview that I did with Peter Thiel and some of his comments last week in Aspen, which was, he of course was a massive bull.
Yes.
Famously called Warren Buffett a sociopathic grandpa because he was upset that he was against Bitcoin. But he seemed to take his foot off the gas at a minimum, suggesting maybe this price is where things are, and even made the comment, which I was very surprised by, about the way he looks at, the FBI and how the FBI says, criminals are using Bitcoin, and it was such a fascinating shift. I have to say, I was, like, when I asked the question, I thought I was, ready for him to say, it's going to, a Tom Lee style, or Kathy Wood style, 500,000, and it was very much the opposite. I was totally caught off guard. Were you?
Yes and no. I mean, he has been very early in Bitcoin, so for him,
Right.
as he thinks about total return and he being, a venture capitalist, I think he's looking around today and seeing that there's all these other new opportunities. So Bitcoin isn't as shiny as it used to be, but that kind of makes sense because, the next generation of holders of Bitcoin are more institutional, not necessarily venture early stage capitalists like Peter Thiel.
I was surprised at with a gun to my head, I might vote for Trump. He raised money for Trump last time. He got so butthurt. He got so butthurt from that he barely can. I felt kind of bad. He looks like he's still dealing with the fallout from being doxxed and everything else. It's tough to live in Silicon Valley after you did that.
He doesn't live in Silicon Valley.
Well, I'm sure he doesn't at this point.
No, he moved to LA a long time ago.
Oh, well, that helps. I mean, he's still incognito there. He's got his N95 on all the time.
He does not, trust me. Great to see you.
It's great to see him.